Today, we're plunging headfirst into a world from the past, specifically a collection of fascinating glimpses you've shared with us from the early pages of a monumental piece of literature.
That's right. And these aren't just, random excerpts. They're snapshots offering a really complex window into Russian society back in the early 1800s. So our goal today is really to navigate these scenes together, sort of peel back the layers and uncover the key insights about the characters, the social dynamics at play, and, well, the historical forces shaping their lives.
Think of it as getting a guided tour, maybe, through the drawing rooms and battlefields, pulling out the most surprising facts and those crucial aha moments that help us understand the bigger picture.
Exactly.
We're talking social maneuvering, youthful drama, the cold reality of war, and some really deep personal searches. Let's really dig into this stack of sources you've given us and see what emerges.
Okay, so these excerpts, they give us a foundational look at the periods just before, and just as Russia becomes fully entangled in the Napoleonic Wars of 1805.
Right, 1805.
They introduce us to the principal families and individuals. You got the Bezukovs, the Rostovs, the Bolkonskis, the Kuragins, and others, showing them navigating very different spheres of this society. And there's a deliberate contrast set up, I think.
Between what?
Between the formal, almost artificial world of Petersburg and the more sort of organic, maybe chaotic life in Moscow.
That contrast feels really important.
Okay.
Let's jump right into Petersburg then, specifically Anna Pavlovna Scherer's salon. The source describes this as a crucial social gathering place. What's the atmosphere like in this room? It feels less like a relaxed get-together and more strategic.
Oh, it absolutely is strategic, yeah. Anna Pavlovna's salon is less about genuine connection and much more about performance and
Control. How so?
Well, she's the orchestrator, right? She's constantly working to manage the flow of conversation, steering guests away from, let's say, controversial topics, keeping everyone on the approved social and political path. The source mentions her efforts to guide conversations, to direct individuals like Pierre. It really highlights that these gatherings weren't just entertainment. They were social battlegrounds, places where reputations were made or broken and alliances were subtly reinforced.
And into this meticulously managed space steps Helene Kuragina, who is presented first and foremost through her stunning physical presence. I mean, the description is almost overwhelming.
It really is. The source calls her a perfectly beautiful woman, and the description focuses on the physical details. The unchanging smile, the gleam of white shoulders, glossy hair, and sparkling diamonds.
Yeah.
But the truly striking insight here is how her beauty functions. It's so powerful, so unquestionable and all too victorious that she doesn't need to try.
Right, she doesn't need coquetry.
Exactly. She shows no trace of coquetry. In fact, she seems almost shy of her unquestionable and all too victorious beauty. She doesn't actively engage people, she just is, and her presence is enough.
And that detail about her dress trimmed with moss and ivy?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It adds this element of almost natural, sort of mythical beauty to a figure adorned with highly artificial, glittering diamonds. It's quite a contrast.
That's fascinating. So her beauty is a form of power, but maybe one she doesn't fully command or even feel slightly apart from. It does make you think about how extreme physical presence shapes social interactions. Is it always an advantage, or can it be its own kind of isolation, setting someone apart?
Exactly. It sets her apart. She doesn't need the conversational skills or the social graces that Anna Pavlovna is so carefully cultivating in her room.
Yeah.
Her beauty is her currency, and it's so valuable, it kind of negates the need for other forms of social capital, at least in that immediate setting.
Okay, so contrast her then with Pierre Bezukov, who arrives looking completely out of place. He's described as ungainly, stout, with huge red hands.
Sure.
The source explicitly states he did not know how to enter a drawing room, and still less how to leave one. And there's that perfect little detail about him absent-mindedly picking up the general's hat and pulling the plume.
Oh, Pierre. He's the social misfit in this precise environment. He's physically awkward, lacks polish, and clearly hasn't mastered the unspoken rules of the salon.
That hat incident says it all, really.
It perfectly illustrates his distraction and lack of conventional social awareness. He's intellectual, perhaps, but not attuned to the performance required here. Yet, and this is important, the source immediately balances this by noting his kindly, simple, and modest expression. Redeems these flaws in some eyes.
Right.
This is crucial because it tells us that while society might see his awkwardness, there's an underlying quality that some people recognize and value, hinting at the depth of his character beneath that surface awkwardness.
And his political views also set him apart in this staunchly anti-Napoleonic crowd. He just dives right in, defending Napoleon enthusiastically. What points does he make that are so provocative in this room?
Well, he argues that Napoleon is great because he rose superior to the revolution, suppressed its abuses, preserved all that was good in it, equality of citizenship and freedom of speech and of the press, and only for that reason did he obtain power.
So he sees Napoleon as preserving revolutionary ideals.
Exactly. Not just as a military figure, but as a product and preserver of those ideals, bringing order while retaining positive freedoms. This is a direct challenge to the prevailing sentiment, which is perfectly articulated by the Vicomte, who believes Napoleon would only be great if he restored the legitimate monarch.
So Pierre's just speaking his mind, basically.
Yeah, his idealism and willingness to voice genuinely held beliefs, even if they are unpopular in this setting, highlight his lack of social calculation compared to others.
And Anna Pavlovna's efforts to manage him and his opinions are clear. Her final words to him, "I hope to see you again, but I also hope you will change your opinions, my dear Monsieur Pierre," really hammer home that pressure to conform.
Oh, that line is a masterclass in polite social pressure, isn't it? Delivered with a smile, but the message is unambiguous. Your opinions are not acceptable here, and you're expected to align yourself with the groupthink.
The whole scene feels tightly controlled.
It does. From the managed conversations to the awkwardness of departure that even affects Pierre, it underscores how rigid these social norms were, and the subtle power wielded by figures like Anna Pavlovna to enforce them. We even get a brief mention of the little Princess Lise, who appears distressed.
Yeah, just a hint there.
Small detail hinting at the personal unhappiness that can exist beneath the surface of social participation, which we definitely see more of later.
Okay, so that's the tightly controlled, maybe somewhat artificial world of the Petersburg salon. Let's shift gears dramatically to the Rostov household in Moscow, which feels like a completely different universe.
It really does, yeah. If Anna Pavlovna's is about calculated performance, the Rostovs is about vibrant, often chaotic, and emotionally expressive family life.
Right.
We're introduced to the core family, the Countess and Count Rostov, the young daughters Natasha and Sonia, son Nicholas, and others like Boris Drubetskoy and his mother, Anna Mikhailovna, plus Vera and Petya. The atmosphere is just warmer, less constrained, and much more focused on youthful energy and familial bonds.
And that energy is immediately palpable with Natasha and Sonia. The scene with Natasha impatiently waiting for Boris, almost ready to cry, then hiding in the conservatory among the flower tubs, watching Boris examine himself in the mirror. It's full of youthful intensity and unself-conscious observation.
That moment really captures Natasha's impulsive nature and her deep emotional life. Hiding and watching Boris, experiencing that new and peculiar pleasure, feeling as under an invisible cap, it's a pure expression of youthful curiosity and, well, nascent feeling.
And then Sonia rushes in, upset.
Exactly. Then Sonia enters, upset, and Nicholas arrives. It's a household where emotions just spill out, where youthful dramas are lived intensely and openly, in stark contrast to the carefully veiled feelings in the salon.
Overseeing this at times is Maria Dmitrievna Akrasimova, known as Le Terrible Dragon. The sources describe her formidable reputation, respected and feared not for rank or wealth, but for common sense and frank plainness of speech.
Yeah, she's a fascinating character.
Her nickname is known everywhere, and people respect her honesty even while privately laughing at her rudeness.
This is a crucial figure because she represents a source of authority that is completely independent of the usual markers of status, title, and wealth. Her power comes purely from her personality, her unwavering adherence to common sense, and her willingness to speak blunt truths.
She just cuts through it all.
She cuts through pretense, which is why she is both feared and respected. In a society often governed by artifice, her frankness is a powerful, almost revolutionary trait.
We see that frankness at the dinner table. While the Count enjoys pitting people like Berg and Boris against each other, Maria Dmitrievna offers a stark, stoic perspective on her sons in the army. It is all in God's hands. You may die in your bed, or God may spare you in a battle.
It's such a bracing dose of reality in the midst of dinner conversation, isn't it? While others might discuss strategy or express anxieties, she just boils it down to a fundamental truth about life, death, and fate.
Yeah, no sugarcoating there.
No. It's a perspective born of experience and a certain resignation, and it carries weight precisely because it comes from her.
Natasha's vivacity is also on full display. Her energy, her lack of self-consciousness, her dancing with such joy and laughter.
She is absolutely the heart of the Rostov warmth and spontaneity. Her inability to be anything other than herself, whether it's her impatient questions, "Oh, really, Mama? Why should you? What is there to be surprised at?" or her joyful dancing, makes her incredibly captivating. She hasn't yet learned to mask her emotions or conform to rigid expectations.
Which is her charm, maybe.
It's both her charm and potentially her vulnerability later on. Yeah.
And Sonia's distress, which Natasha immediately notices and comforts, shows the strength of the sisterly bond, but also reveals some underlying tensions within the household, specifically related to Vera finding verses and threatening to expose them.
Right, Vera. She's often depicted as more reserved and critical than Natasha and Sonia. Her action of finding private writings and using them as a threat highlights a less generous, perhaps more conventional aspect of her personality that contrasts with the open emotionality of her sisters.
So even in this close family.
Exactly. It shows that even within this seemingly close-knit family, there are internal dynamics and conflicts at play.
Okay, so from the warmth of the Rostov home and the performance of the Petersburg Salon, the sources then plunge us into a much darker scene, the dying Count Bezukhov's house, where the pursuit of inheritance is laid bare.
Yeah, this is where the underlying motivations of society members become starkly visible, stripped down by the imminent presence of death. The atmosphere is one of thinly veiled opportunism. You've got Prince Vasily and Anna Mikhailovna there, orbiting the dying Count Kirill Vladimirovich, each with a very clear agenda related to his fortune.
Anna Mikhailovna is particularly active. She presents herself as the devoted relative, claiming sincere affection and devotion to uncle, and offering to help nurse him. But her true purpose seems to be securing Boris's future, right? Which depends on getting a slice of that vast inheritance.
Absolutely. She's subtly pushing Prince Vasily, discussing the Count's final duty, taking charge by settling into an armchair. It's manipulation under the guise of familial duty.
It's a classic example.
It's a classic example of social climbing and self-interest camouflaged by the language of affection and concern. She is calculating her moves, positioning herself and her son to benefit from the Count's death. Her actions are driven by a very clear, pragmatic goal, securing wealth and status for her family through the Count's inheritance, leveraging any connections she has, however tenuous, like Boris being his godson.
Prince Vasily, while just as interested in the fortune, seems to operate differently. He frowns when Anna Mikhailovna mentions Boris, recognizing her as a potential rival for the inheritance. He seems less overtly manipulative in this moment, maybe more wary.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Prince Vasily's maneuvering is described later as more of an ingrained habit of getting on, an unconscious way of operating, rather than deliberate, malicious plotting.
So it's just how he functions.
Pretty much. He's instinctively calculating the odds and identifying threats to his own interests. His concern here is purely pragmatic. Who else stands to gain from this death, and how does that impact his own potential gains?
And then there's Pierre, the dying Count's illegitimate son, who is summoned by his father. Even in this somber, intense setting, Pierre is his usual absent-minded self, wondering if he was really sent for, wanting to go to his own room.
Poor Pierre. He is completely outside the social and financial game being played around him. He's present because his father called for him, a recognition of his connection, but he doesn't grasp the significance of the moment in terms of inheritance or social positioning.
And Anna Mikhailovna tries to engage him, touching his arm, telling him to be a man.
Yeah, her interaction with him shows her awareness of his lack of worldly shrewdness and her attempt to perhaps mold him or at least understand where he fits into the inheritance picture. She's always working an angle.
The scene around the dying Count is described as chaotic priests. Doctors, whisperings, the service continuing. Pierre notices Prince Vasily and the eldest princess leaving and returning during the service, clearly preoccupied with something else.
Likely legal matters, the will.
Right. And Pierre concludes, what he saw happening around him that evening was in some way essential, but doesn't understand the why.
And that's Pierre's characteristic perspective, isn't it? He observes the outward forms and senses their importance, but the underlying mechanisms, the greed, the calculation, the power struggles, remain opaque to him at this point.
It's a stark scene.
The deathbed scene is a powerful illustration of how the presence of death can starkly expose fundamental human motivations, like ambition and self-interest, stripping away the usual social niceties. It's a grim look behind the curtain of society.
So we've seen the carefully constructed social worlds. Now, these sources take us to a completely different realm. the military engagements and experiences of 1805.
And we see a different kind of reckless energy enter the picture immediately. There's that scene with Dolokhov, Anatole, and Pierre, and Dolokhov's wild stunt, drinking a bottle of rum while perched on a high windowsill, the pain removed.
Pure showing off, basically.
Pure bravado and disregard for safety.
And Pierre's simple reaction, first rate, captures that youthful sense of, admiration for daring. This kind of reckless behavior exists alongside the rigid hierarchy and tension of military life, like the general's frustration during drills and his anticipation of a high-ranking visitor.
Exactly. The military world has its own strict rules, but also allows for these moments of flamboyant risk-taking, particularly among certain characters like Dolokhov. The general's focus on details like dress and drill and his anxiety about a superior's arrival highlight the pressures within the command structure.
The need to look good.
Right, the constant need to maintain appearances and readiness for inspection, which can feel very separate from the actual readiness for battle.
Dolokhov clashes directly with that structure, though. When the general insults him, Dolokhov, even though he's just a private, responds with defiant dignity, not bound to endure insults spoken in loud, ringing tones.
That moment is a direct confrontation between personality and military discipline, but also class, I think. Dolokhov, despite his reduced rank, retains a sense of self-worth that won't allow him to accept public insults from a superior.
And the general's reaction.
Furious. Orders him to change his coat. It shows the swift and absolute nature of military authority when challenged, regardless of the validity of the complaint.
The arrival of Kutuzov is a moment of intense focus, signaled by a shout and immediate formal reactions from the officers.
Yes, everything shifts when the commander-in-chief arrives. It's a moment of high formality and anticipation where all attention is directed to the figure of authority, a brief pause before the real action potentially begins.
Okay. Moving to the scenes around Schöngrabern, we see Kutuzov interacting with the Austrian general. Kutuzov is calm, even gives a wry smile, while the Austrian is described as querulous and angry, despite using flattering words, accusing the Russians of causing delays.
This interaction is just a brilliant microcosm of the tensions and mistrust within the Allied forces, isn't it? Even when facing a common enemy, national pride, differing strategies and underlying resentments create friction.
And Kutuzov's response?
It's quite subtle, calm, almost mocking. You are quite at liberty not to believe me, but you have no grounds for telling me so, and that is the whole point. It highlights his diplomatic skill and his awareness of the Austrian general's difficult position, while subtly asserting his own authority.
Prince Andrew's internal state before this battle is quite striking. He's excited, irritated, convinced this is his moment for glory, his Toulon or Bridge of Arcola.
Right, he's got big ambitions.
But he also fears Napoleon's genius and decides to write to his father daily.
This shows that complex mix of soaring ambition and underlying human vulnerability. He is seeking personal glory, a chance to prove himself on the grand stage of history, viewing the coming battle through the lens of past heroic moments. But his fear of Napoleon acknowledges the formidable reality of the enemy.
And writing home anchors him.
Exactly. His commitment to writing his father reveals a deeply personal anchor amidst his professional aspirations. His encounter with Nesvitsky and Zherkov, who are laughing, emphasizes how his intense focus on the potential for glory contrasts with the more relaxed or perhaps cynical attitudes of others.
The scenes on the bridge capture the chaos and varied responses to immediate danger. Denisov is a whirlwind of chaotic energy and rage, wanting to push through, believing every bullet has its billet.
Yeah, Denisov is something else.
While an officer urges caution, others watch from a distance, observing the French.
This sequence perfectly illustrates the different facets of courage and fear on the battlefield. You have Denisov's impetuous, almost fatalistic bravery, the sensible, pragmatic caution of the other officer, and the more detached perspective of the staff observing from afar. The description of the French uniforms, yellow shakos, dark green jackets, blue uniforms, makes the approaching enemy vividly real.
Prince Bagration's presence is described with his hard brown face, half-closed, dull, sleepy eyes, and impassive demeanor. Yet it's clear to everyone that it has begun. Prince Andrew is intensely curious, wondering if there's anything at all behind that impassive face. Bagration's slow, deliberate speech with an Oriental accent, his calm orders amidst whistling bullets, a ceasefiring and reform, and his simple encouragement to the soldiers, well done, lads, paint a powerful picture.
Bagration is presented as the epitome of stoic military leadership. He doesn't display outward emotion or frantic energy, but his quiet presence commands respect and signifies the seriousness of the situation.
And Andrew is watching him closely.
Yes. Prince Andrew's fascination with him underscores his own search for true leadership and effectiveness. Bagration's ability to remain calm and issue clear, deliberate orders under fire, and his connection with the common soldiers, well done, lads, demonstrate a different kind of power than the bureaucratic authority we saw earlier, a power based on presence and competence in the face of imminent danger.
The attack and retreat scenes show the messy reality of battle. The Russian charge, Tushin's battery holding the line by firing on the village to cover the retreat.
Tushin's role is crucial there.
But also the hurried and noisy retreat of the center and the confusion on the left flank.
This is where the reality of war on the ground is starkly contrasted with the ordered plans made on maps. There are moments of individual and unit heroism, like Tushin's stand, which is critical for allowing the retreat to happen, but there's also disorder, panic, and confusion. The chaos on the left flank, specifically mentioned as thrown into confusion, leads directly into an example of failure.
That failure is embodied by Zhirkov, sent with orders to the left flank, but whose courage failed him, and he was seized by panic, failing to deliver the crucial order.
A direct counterpoint to the bravery shown by others. Zhirkov's individual failure, born of fear and panic, has tangible consequences for the outcome of the engagement on that part of the line. It highlights how individual human weakness can contribute to the overall dislocation and blunder, that feeling, noted in the sources, that spreads through the ranks and is often blamed on external factors.
Like the stupid Germans.
Exactly. Blaming others is easier.
And there's that absurd scene of the two commanders on the left flank arguing over seniority like two fighting cocks even after the action had begun elsewhere, more concerned with detecting cowardice in each other than leading their men effectively.
It's almost comical if it weren't so serious. This is another layer of military failure. The internal conflicts and ego clashes that undermine effective command. Rank and seniority become more important than the urgent need for decisive action, and mutual suspicion poisons cooperation. It underscores the human failings that can doom military operations even before the enemy is fully engaged.
The aftermath is grim. Tushin's battery retreats, and he's met by staff officers, including Zhirkov, who reprimand him for actions taken during his heroic stand. Tushin is silent, feeling ready to weep.
Devastating.
We see the wounded dragging themselves along the infantry officer with a bullet in his stomach, the hussar cadet.
This brings us back to the brutal human cost and the arbitrary nature of military bureaucracy. Tushin, who arguably saved part of the army through his brave, unconventional actions, is reprimanded by those who were nowhere near the fighting, like Zhirkov, who failed in his own duty.
The injustice is palpable.
It's a devastating moment that shows the disconnect between genuine courage and the judgment of the hierarchy. And the image of the wounded is a raw, visceral reminder of the suffering that underlies all the strategy and maneuvers. It really drives home that point you made earlier. War isn't just the map, it's the ground and the individuals on it.
After the battle, Prince Andrew is sent as a dispatch rider to Brunn with news of the victory, a special favor, and a step towards promotion. He's noted for his physical endurance despite his delicate build.
This shows that Prince Andrew is recognized for his competence and valued within the military structure, at least by some. Being chosen for this mission indicates trust and opportunity. His physical endurance, perhaps unexpected given his intellectual nature and appearance, is a small but interesting detail about his underlying strength.
But his encounter with the Minister of War in Brunn reveals that disconnect between the front line and the bureaucratic centers of power. The minister is indifferent, prioritizing papers, putting on a stupid artificial smile for petitioners. Prince Andrew feels it's a matter of perfect indifference to me.
This scene is absolutely crucial for Prince Andrew's growing disillusionment. He's come from the immediacy of life and death on the battlefield, full of the significance of what just happened, only to be met by the detached, self-important formalities of the bureaucracy.
That empty smile.
The minister's automatic empty smile for anyone seeking favor highlights the superficiality of the court world compared to the brutal honesty of war. Prince Andrew sees this and feels a profound sense of alienation from this kind of administrative power.
He also encounters members of the diplomatic corps in Brunn, placing him in that world of high society connected to the military command. There's another bridge incident mentioned where he encounters a tipsy officer hindering troops who is abusive and threatens him.
Yeah, that smaller incident reinforces the theme of disorder and lack of discipline that can exist within the army, even at a distance from the main conflict. It contrasts sharply with the formal review and the moments of bravery we saw earlier. It's another piece of the imperfect, often messy reality of military life.
Finally, these early military sections set the stage for the immense strategic challenges faced by Kutuzov before Austerlitz. He receives news of Napoleon's advance, threatening his communication line, leaving him with three terrible options: be surrounded like Mack, retreat into the mountains without supplies, or risk a battle he's likely to lose.
This encapsulates the dire strategic situation. Kutuzov is presented with a series of no-win choices, each with potentially catastrophic consequences. The spy's news makes the abstract threat of the enemy a concrete, immediate crisis. This section serves as a powerful lead-in to the disaster of Austerlitz, demonstrating the impossible pressures faced by commanders at the highest level.
So we've navigated the different social and military landscapes. Now the sources really begin to delve into the personal journeys and decisions of these characters as they are shaped by these environments. Prince Vasily's schemes, for instance, continue unabated, particularly targeting Pierre.
Yes, Prince Vasily's character is described not as deliberately evil, but as a man driven by the habit of getting on, constantly, almost unconsciously, weaving schemes and devices to benefit himself.
It's just second nature to him.
Exactly. His instinct is to gain confidence, flatter, get close, and then ask for favors or money. It's a subtle, ingrained form of social predation.
And we see this immediately after the Count Bezukhov's death, where Prince Vasily tells Pierre he's received what's due from the Ryazan estate and will just keep it, promising to go over accounts later.
This is a clear, cold act of taking advantage of Pierre's trusting nature and his disinterest in financial matters. Prince Vasily is essentially pocketing part of Pierre's inheritance under the guise of managing his affairs, knowing Pierre is unlikely to notice or challenge him.
It just highlights Pierre's vulnerability.
It highlights how easily Pierre, with his awkwardness and idealism, can be exploited by the more calculating members of society.
This maneuvering extends to orchestrating a marriage between Pierre and his own daughter, Helene. Anna Pavlovna joins in, subtly pushing the idea, calling Helene exquisite, praising her social tact and perfection, and suggesting she'll make the least worldly of men into a social success.
Oh, it's a deliberate social engineering project.
Exactly.
Pierre has inherited enormous wealth. Helene has breathtaking beauty and social grace. In the eyes of Prince Vasily and Anna Pavlovna, they are the perfect assets to combine.
A transaction, really.
Pretty much. The description of Helene's qualities focuses entirely on her outward presentation and social function. Her beauty, her manners, her ability to enhance a man's social position, reinforcing the idea that this proposed marriage is purely a transaction of wealth and status.
Pierre's internal conflict about Helene is one of the most compelling parts of these sources. After the party, he suddenly sees that she might belong to him. His internal struggle is intense. He knows she's stupid, feels something nasty, something wrong about his desire for her.
Right, he senses it.
Remembers rumors of her relationship with her brother Anatole, and recognizes the dishonor of marrying her, given her father's motives.
But despite all his rational and moral objections, the sheer force of his desire and the image of her beauty, whole body only veiled by its gray dress, just overwhelm his reason.
He starts rationalizing.
She starts to fantasize about her being his wife, imagining she'll become quite different, and feels a terrifying sense that he's already somehow bound himself to this path. It's that classic conflict between intellect, morality, and overwhelming physical attraction and social pressure. His desire, combined with his social awkwardness and lack of experience, leaves him incredibly vulnerable.
That social pressure is relentless. Prince Vasily sets up frequent parties that Pierre feels obligated to attend, using physical gestures like taking his hand or offering his cheek to kiss to reinforce the connection and obligation.
Prince Vasily is using every social tool at his disposal to ensnare Pierre. He's creating an environment where the idea of the match becomes inescapable, where Pierre feels increasingly beholden and pressured by social norms and Prince Vasily's calculated displays of affection.
And Pierre tries to rationalize Helene's lack of substance, convincing himself she's not stupid because she never makes a mistake, never says anything stupid. Her brief, appropriate remarks and silent look and smile make his own doubts feel like nonsense.
Yeah, he twists it,
giving her a perceived superiority.
He's caught in a trap of his own making, trying to force his intellectual understanding to align with his overwhelming desire and the social momentum. He interprets her social polish and lack of awkwardness as intelligence, allowing him to dismiss his initial, accurate judgment of her character.
And this leads to a loss of will in Pierre. He feels he lacks the strength to decide. Realizing his strength comes from feeling quite innocent, the desire he felt for Helene created an unacknowledged sense of the guilt that paralyzed his will.
That's a crucial psychological insight, isn't it? Pierre's moral core is deeply connected to his capacity for agency. The impure nature of his desire for Helene, tied up with the manipulative circumstances of the proposed marriage, creates an internal conflict that drains his ability to act decisively. His sense of guilt, even if unacknowledged, incapacitates him, leaving him vulnerable to the external pressures.
The scene at Helene's name day party is the culmination. It's presented as a casual gathering, just their own people, but it's clearly orchestrated. Prince Vasily is deliberately merry, not noticing Pierre and Helene together. The atmosphere is festive.
Everything about this scene is designed to make the engagement feel natural and inevitable. The fetting, the mood, Prince Vasily's carefully enacted obliviousness, it's all social theater aimed at cornering Pierre. Anna Pavlovna's departure, feigning a headache after congratulating the old princess, is another detail highlighting the prearranged nature of the event.
Pierre is left alone with Helene, feeling the inevitability but unable to act. He feels ashamed, like he's in someone else's place, and an inner voice whispers, "This happiness is not for you."
Even as he succumbs to the pressure and his own desire, his deepest self recognizes the fundamental falseness of the situation. The sense of shame and the inner voice tell us that this path, while socially advantageous and fueled by attraction, is fundamentally wrong for him. It's a moment of profound internal conflict where his authentic self registers a protest against the course his life is taking. This marriage, driven by calculation and desire rather than genuine connection, will have devastating consequences for him.
Okay, turning back to the Rostovs, we see Nicholas serving as a guardsman officer, encountering Prince Andrew in Olmütz after a review. Nicholas is ready for confrontation, wanting to insult Prince Andrew, but respects Prince Andrew's calm self-possession.
Yeah, this meeting contrasts Nicholas's youthful impulsiveness and readiness to take offense with Prince Andrew's more seasoned, composed demeanor. Prince Andrew, having seen more of the realities of war and life, dismisses the potential insult, focusing on the more significant duel of the coming battle. It shows his growing maturity and shifting priorities.
The Imperial Review at Olmütz is described vividly, regiments coming alive as the Tsar approaches, the thunderous hurrah, the movement of the suites, the focus on the emperors. Rostov's feelings are intense, wanting to obey the emperor instantly, even leap into fire.
This really captures the powerful emotional impact of the Tsar's presence on his soldiers, particularly a fervent young man like Nicholas. The review is presented as a spectacle of imperial power and the soldiers' almost religious devotion. Nicholas is completely swept up in this moment of patriotic and personal fervor, feeling an intense desire to prove his loyalty and readiness for sacrifice.
After the review, Rostov's desire for the higher world of headquarters is strengthened. He feels insignificant in Olmütz among exalted personages and the dismissive adjutants at Kutuzov's headquarters.
Yeah, this experience fuels his ambition to rise in the military ranks and enter the world of power and influence. Feeling overlooked by the staff officers who are heartily sick of officers like him, reinforces his yearning to belong to that higher echelon.
News from headquarters includes Boris Drubetskoy also being there, attached to an important personage, another sign of his and his mother's strategic positioning.
Right, Boris is always clamming.
Prince Andrew and Dolgorukov discuss the coming attack, with Dolgorukov confidently predicting Napoleon is in our hands, dismissing his letter as tradirira.
This conversation highlights the overconfidence and potential complacency at headquarters, doesn't it? A dangerous contrast to the challenging strategic situation Kutuzov is facing. Dolgorukov's arrogance about Napoleon and his focus on trivialities like how to address the reply reveal a detachment for the harsh realities of the military situation and an underestimation of the enemy.
Which doesn't bode well.
No, combined with the earlier signs of dislocation and blunder, it definitely foreshadows a poor outcome for the upcoming battle.
The night before Austerlitz, Rostov hears the shouts from the French line, wondering what they mean, feeling part of a huge army. But a sense of some dislocation and blunder spreads through the ranks, blamed on the stupid Germans.
This captures that shift from anticipation to unease. The sounds from the enemy introduce an element of the unknown, while the growing feeling of internal disorder undermines confidence. Blaming the Allies is a way to cope with the unsettling sense that something is fundamentally wrong with the plan and its execution, even before the battle begins in earnest.
And then we see the personal consequence of this general atmosphere and Rostov's nature through his gambling. He loses 1,600 rubles to Dolokhov, money his father gave him, breaking his word of honor.
Oh, this is a devastating personal crisis for Rostov. The amount lost is significant, representing his father's trust and his own promise broken. The details, his sinking heart watching Dolokhov's hands, the specific card make the scene incredibly vivid and tense.
His reaction is extreme.
His despair, thinking, it's all up, I'm lost, now a bullet through my brain, that's all that's left me, reveals the depth of his emotional turmoil and the severity of the financial and moral hole he's dug for himself through this act of recklessness.
His dread of returning home after this loss is immense, especially contrasting it with the vibrant, warm atmosphere he finds: music, singing, games, Natasha and Sonia in their light blue dresses, the poetic atmosphere of love which pervaded the Rostov household.
The warmth and innocence of his home life stand in stark, painful contrast to the debt and despair he carries. This juxtaposition emphasizes what he has risked and potentially lost through his gambling. The comfort and security of his family feel like an unappreciated bliss now that he is facing the potential consequences of his actions.
Sonia and Natasha's discussion adds another layer to the family dynamics and foreshadows future challenges. Natasha notices something new between Sonia and Dolokhov and has a strong, almost intuitive conviction that Nicholas will not marry Sonia, despite their love.
Natasha's intuition is often spot on, isn't it? While Nicholas and Sonia are in love, there are significant obstacles, primarily the family's financial situation and Sonia's lack of a dowry, which the Count himself acknowledges is a problem he feels guilty about. Natasha's conviction highlights the unspoken social and economic pressures that threaten their potential union.
Finally, in this section, we see Denisov's awkward emotional proposal to Natasha, his unsteady voice, downcast eyes, declaring his adoration for her and the family. Natasha sobs. The Countess's response is cold and pragmatic, refusing him due to his youth and requiring him to speak to her first. Denisov leaves quickly.
This moment vividly portrays that clash between genuine emotion and social and financial realities. Denisov's feelings are sincere, but his expression of them is perhaps clumsy, and the Countess, as the pragmatic head of the family managing their precarious finances, immediately dismisses the possibility based on his lack of standing or means, despite his obvious affection.
It's pretty harsh.
It's a painful reminder that love and personal feelings are often secondary to practical considerations in this society's marriage arrangements.
So these personal journeys and decisions in this period, Pierre's manipulated marriage, Rostov's financial recklessness, the challenges to Nicholas and Sonia's love, Denisov's rejected proposal, show how individual character, desires, and vulnerabilities intersect with the social and financial structures of the time, often leading to difficult or painful outcomes.
Yeah, they reveal the cost of lacking social savvy, the destructive power of unchecked impulses, and the ways in which external pressures, particularly financial and social ones, can shape or thwart personal desires and relationships.
Moving into the period between 1806 and 1807, the sources show us a period of transformation and searching for key characters, particularly Pierre and Prince Andrew. For Pierre, this begins with the crisis following his duel with Dolokhov.
Yes, the duel is a definite turning point. Pierre experiences an agonizing, sleepless night, his mind just consumed by unresolved problems. This intense internal crisis, exacerbated during his journey, leads him to a state of profound searching for meaning and answers.
And in this state, he encounters the Mason. This meeting is pivotal. The Mason speaks of finding knowledge through inner purification, comparing highest wisdom to purest liquid received into a vessel, emphasizing that human reason alone is insufficient. He is not to be apprehended by reason, but by life.
The Mason offers Pierre a spiritual path, doesn't he? A way to find truth and meaning not through intellectual pursuits or worldly success, but through internal moral and spiritual development. This resonates deeply with Pierre, who feels lost and compromised by his recent experiences and his unhappy marriage. The emphasis on inner purification directly addresses his sense of guilt.
And his reaction?
Immediate and profound. A swelling heart, shining eyes, belief with his whole soul, feeling joyful sense of comfort, regeneration, and return to life.
But his belief isn't immediately stable. Doubt creeps back in, a want of clearness in the arguments, and he dreads not being able to believe.
Which highlights the struggle for Pierre. His intellectual nature makes it difficult for him to accept things solely on faith. He grapples with rational understanding even as he yearns for spiritual truth. His journey is not a simple conversion, but a complex interplay of mind, heart, and soul.
He is initiated into Masonry, learns about symbols like the square. Hearing rumors about his duel wreaking the emperor and a suggestion he leave Petersburg prompts him to plan to go to his southern estates to work for the welfare of his serfs, a new plan of life he finds joyful.
Right. Masonry provides him with a new structure for understanding the world and a sense of purpose rooted in self-improvement and benevolence. The idea of helping his serfs gives him a concrete outlet for his newfound idealism, a way to apply his principles to the world. Leaving Petersburg also represents a symbolic break from the corrupting social world that has caused him such pain.
However, his newly envisioned life is immediately interrupted by the sudden reappearance of Prince Vasily, who, as the source notes, was not a man who deliberately thought out his plans, but acts on instinct to get on.
Yes, this is such a powerful symbol of the difficulty Pierre faces in truly escaping the pressures and obligations of his social standing and past mistakes. Just as he's embarking on a path of spiritual and moral reform, the embodiment of the calculating worldly society he's trying to leave reappears, pulling him back into that sphere, reminding him that his wealth and position come with inescapable social ties.
Pierre eventually becomes dissatisfied with Russian Masonry, finding it focused only on externals and suspecting it has taken a wrong path. He decides to go abroad for higher secrets.
Which shows that Pierre's search is ongoing and discerning. He's not satisfied with superficial ritual or social posturing. He's genuinely seeking deeper truth and authentic spiritual practice. His journey abroad is a continuation of this quest.
Upon his return, the Petersburg Masons, learning he's gained the confidence of highly placed persons and been initiated into many mysteries, try to ingratiate themselves, hoping he's brought back beneficial things for them.
Which again underscores the social and political dimensions of Masonry in Russia at the time, at least among some members. For many, it was clearly a vehicle for networking and gaining influence, not purely a spiritual path. This experience likely confirms Pierre's earlier suspicions and contributes to his continued searching for a more genuine connection to his beliefs.
The sources also mention a dream he has, waking with the profound gospel text. "The life was the light of men, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." He sees his benefactor Joseph Alexeyevich's face, looking young and bright, and receives a letter about conjugal duties.
These details suggest a deeper spiritual understanding is dawning for Pierre, perhaps clarifying his path. The gospel text speaks to a fundamental truth about light and life that he's beginning to grasp. The reference to conjugal duties, particularly given his disastrous marriage to Helene, indicates that his spiritual search is also forcing him to confront the difficult realities of his personal life and responsibilities.
Meanwhile, Prince Andrew, after Austerlitz, is profoundly disillusioned. He's firmly resolved not to continue his military service and takes a less prestigious post under his father to avoid active service.
His experience of the chaos, suffering, and perhaps the ultimate pointlessness of the battle, at least in terms of achieving his personal ambition for glory, has led him to reject the military as a source of fulfillment. He's seeking something different, a life away from the action and the pursuit of conventional success.
He receives a large estate, Bogucharovo, from his father, and chooses to live there in solitude, building and spending most of his time there, avoiding his father's peculiarities.
This is his attempt at retreat and introspection. He's seeking peace, order, and meaning in a more controlled environment, away from the social and military worlds that have left him feeling empty. Living on his estate, focusing on building and management, is a way of creating a tangible world he can control, perhaps a contrast to the uncontrollability of battle.
The sources note a shift in roles between him and his father. The old prince is energized by the new campaign, active and optimistic, while Prince Andrew is passive, seeing only the dark side, though he secretly regrets his absence from the war. The father mocks Bonaparte.
This highlights the generational and temperamental difference. The old prince is still caught up in the military world, reverting to his old criticisms and enthusiasms. Prince Andrew, however, is marked by his disillusionment. His secret regret suggests his detachment from the war isn't complete. Part of him still feels the pull of action or duty, even if his intellect and experience tell him otherwise.
The sources detail the old prince's cruelty and peculiarities, his powerful mind coupled with such nonsense, inspiring fear and respect, his physical awkwardness, his contempt for contemporary figures, his frustration with bureaucracy. Hofskrieg's worst Schnapsraff.
He sounds like quite a character.
Prince Andrew finds his father trying, but Princess Mary defends him with deep veneration, claiming she is so contented and happy.
The old prince is a brilliant but tyrannical figure whose complex nature, brilliant mind, rigid principles, and cruel behavior makes him difficult to live with. His peculiarities stem from his controlling nature and his inability to adapt. Prince Andrew sees the destructive side of his father's character, while Princess Mary's deep religious piety and sense of duty lead her to defend him and deny her own suffering, claiming a happiness that seems to contradict the reality of her life under his rule.
It's described as loving despotism.
Yeah, it's a portrait of a deeply dysfunctional family dynamic based on that tyrannical form of loving despotism.
Princess Mary's piety is central to her life. She sees Prince Andrew's intellectual pride as a great sin and believes faith is the answer for him. She describes her profound spiritual experiences, like being in catacombs with saints, feeling such peace all around, such blessedness. Pierre listens attentively and seriously to her.
Princess Mary offers a third path to meaning through traditional religious faith, humility, and devotion. Her perspective contrasts with Prince Andrew's intellectual searching and Pierre's philosophical and Masonic quest. Pierre's attentive listening shows his open-mindedness in his own search. He is willing to consider different forms of spiritual truth.
A truly significant moment occurs during Pierre's visit to Bogucharovo in 1807. Pierre is struck by the change in Prince Andrew frowning, looking old, dull, and lifeless eyes, but thinner, paler, and more manly looking, with inertia and a wrinkle showing prolonged concentration. This meeting is called an epoch in Prince Andrew's life.
This meeting is a collision of their two paths of searching. Pierre, full of his new Masonic ideals, encounters Prince Andrew, weighed down by disillusionment and introspection. The physical changes in Prince Andrew reflect the internal struggle and stagnation he's experiencing. The meeting is significant because it brings these two key characters, both searching for meaning after traumatic experiences, together, allowing their different perspectives to interact and influence each other.
Their philosophical conversation reveals their diverging views. Prince Andrew is cynical about outward efforts, believing true change must come from within. Human dignity, peace of mind, purity, dismissing efforts to improve the serfs' lives.
Yeah, he says, and not the serfs' backs and foreheads, which, beat and shave as you may, always remain the same backs and foreheads. It's pretty bleak.
Pierre strongly disagrees. No, 1,000 times no.
Prince Andrew's cynicism is a product of his post-Austerlitz despair. He believes external actions are ultimately futile, and that the only valid pursuit is internal peace. Pierre, animated by his Masonic belief in benevolence and action, still holds on to the idealism that one can improve the world through concrete efforts. This philosophical clash highlights the core tension between withdrawing from the world to find inner peace and engaging with the world to effect change.
And then comes the critical moment of awakening for Prince Andrew. Pierre points to the sky, and Prince Andrew looks up and sees the high, everlasting sky he had seen while lying on that battlefield for the first time since Austerlitz. Something long been slumbering, best within him, suddenly awoke, joyful and youthful in his soul.
Oh.
Although the feeling fades in his daily life, he knows it exists within him.
This is such a powerful, almost spiritual epiphany for Prince Andrew. The vast, unchanging sky connects him back to a moment of profound transcendence and meaning he experienced when close to death at Austerlitz. It's a reminder that there is something higher and more enduring than the petty concerns and disappointments of earthly life. This flash of insight, triggered by Pierre's simple gesture, awakens the dormant, best part of his soul and marks the beginning of his re-engagement with life and the possibility of finding meaning again, even if integrating this insight into his daily existence is a struggle.
So both Pierre and Prince Andrew are on these parallel paths of searching and transformation, driven by their experiences and seeking something deeper. These journeys continue as the sources bring us back to the social worlds of Petersburg and Moscow between 1808 and 1812.
Yes, and Prince Andrew arrives in Petersburg in 1809, during the height of Speransky's influence, a period of ambitious reforms aimed at restructuring the government from top to bottom, attempting to make vague liberal ideals into reality.
This period highlights a clear generational divide. Prince Andrew encounters an old man of Catherine's day, who is openly contemptuous of him freeing his serfs, asking who will plow his fields, while others like Kochubey are simply surprised by his simplicity.
This scene really encapsulates the resistance to change from the old guard. The old man represents the deeply ingrained conservative mindset, dismissive of liberal ideas like freeing serfs, viewing them as impractical and threatening to the established order. Prince Andrew's actions, though perhaps limited in scope, mark him as belonging to a new generation willing to consider fundamental societal changes, a willingness that surprises those accustomed to the old ways.
As we mentioned earlier, Pierre also returns from abroad during this time, seen by Russian Masons as having gained higher knowledge. The Petersburg Masons try to ingratiate themselves, hoping he's brought back something beneficial for them.
Right, showing the social side again.
Highlighting the social side of Masonry.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that for many in Petersburg society, Masonry was less about genuine spiritual seeking and more about networking, gaining influence, and accessing connections. They see Pierre's return and supposed secrets as a potential advantage for themselves, further highlighting the superficiality that disappointed Pierre in the first place.
Rostov family life continues between 1808 and 1810. Natasha's singing, her sheer joy in the sound, Petya rushing in with news of mummers startling her, the arrival of the frightening and funny mummers bringing cold and gaiety.
These vignettes continue to paint a picture of the Rostov home as a place of spontaneous emotion, youthful exuberance, and traditional lively family life. Natasha's singing is a source of pure joy for her, a physical expression of her vibrant spirit. The mummers bring the outside world of festive custom into their home, adding to the sense of chaotic warmth.
A significant family conflict arises with Nicholas and Sonia's love. Nicholas tells his mother he will marry Sonia. The Countess reacts with cold refusal, then tears of vexation. The Count is irresolute, feeling guilty for having wasted the family fortune, acknowledging Sonia would be a good wife, but their financial state prevents it.
This is such a classic conflict between love and financial reality, isn't it? Yeah. Exacerbated by the family's declining fortunes due to the Count's mismanagement. The Countess prioritizes a financially advantageous marriage for Nicholas, recognizing that Sonia's lack of dowry will further strain the family.
And the Count feels stuck.
The Count's guilt paralyzes him, preventing him from either fully supporting or forbidding the marriage, leaving Nicholas caught in the middle. It clearly shows how economic pressures can severely impact personal happiness and choices, particularly for women in this society.
We also get a glimpse of Berg and Vera's relationship, which is presented as incredibly calculated. Berg rationalizes the marriage based on providing for his parents and managing Vera's fortune with his pay. He claims not to marry for money, but insists a wife must bring her share.
Berg's approach is just a stark contrast to the emotional dynamics we see with the Rostovs. His decision is framed entirely in terms of financial pragmatism and social advancement, presented with a veneer of sensible planning.
He says he's not marrying for money, but
his insistence that he's not marrying for money while simultaneously detailing how her fortune will support them highlights the purely transactional nature of their union. It's a cold, calculated contract presented as a rational partnership.
And then there's Julie Karagina, who becomes a rich heiress and is immediately surrounded by suitors in the whirl of society. Boris Trubetskoy is explicitly sent to Moscow by Prince Vasily to marry her, from Anna Mikhailovna's perspective.
Another clear example of how wealth dictates opportunity and marriage arrangements in this world. Julie's inheritance makes her a prime target for ambitious young men like Boris, whose career and social standing depend on securing a wealthy wife. It's a cynical, strategic deployment of Boris by his manipulative mother and Prince Vasily to capture a fortune through marriage.
Okay, now let's turn to Natasha's experience, particularly her first grand ball. The sources describe her journey there, finding the splendid prospect hard to believe, her attempt at a majestic air failing due to overwhelming excitement, but her naturalness making her most captivating. She's almost overwhelmed by the dazzling scene.
This scene is a beautiful illustration of Natasha's youth and authentic spirit, entering a highly artificial environment. Her natural excitement and inability to maintain a facade make her stand out precisely because she is not trying to do someone she's not. Her genuine reactions, her surprise, delight, shyness, even mistakes in French are what make her so captivating to others, particularly Prince Andrew.
And she meets Prince Andrew again at this ball. He is drawn to her naturalness, her lack of conventional social polish. He talks to her with special care and tenderness, admiring her grace. Pierre notices a new and youthful expression in Prince Andrew when he sees him with Natasha.
This is a pivotal encounter for both of them. Natasha's vitality and authenticity reawakens something in the jaded, introspective Prince Andrew. She represents a connection to genuine feeling in life that he has been missing since his disillusionment after Austerlitz. Pierre's observation of the change in Prince Andrew underscores the transformative effect Natasha has on him. She draws him out of his internal world.
Prince Andrew proposes, but his father, the old prince, insists on a year's delay, hoping their feelings won't last or that he himself will die. Prince Andrew agrees, giving Natasha perfect freedom to reject him. Natasha's reaction to the delay is confusion and distress. But why a year? Why a year?
The old prince's insistence on the delay is a calculated move, isn't it? born of his tyrannical nature and his disapproval of the match, perhaps seeing Natasha's too lively or not of sufficient status for his son. He's essentially setting a test, hoping time will break them apart.
And Andrew agrees.
Prince Andrew agrees, perhaps out of a sense of duty or a belief in testing their love, but it places an immense, incomprehensible burden on the impulsive and emotionally immediate Natasha.
During this year-long engagement, there's no formal betrothal, but Prince Andrew visits daily. They develop quite different, intimate, and natural relations, feeling they were artificial, now natural and sincere. The family gets used to him, seeing evident omens of their union.
It's ironic, isn't it? The old prince's delay, intended to break them apart, actually allows for a deeper, more genuine connection to form. Without the immediate pressure of marriage, they can simply spend time together, getting to know each other on a more authentic level, moving beyond the initial romantic idealization to a more natural companionship.
However, as Prince Andrew is away during this year, Natasha is left vulnerable, and we see Princess Mary's life in Moscow during 1811-1812, which becomes very trying. She misses her solitude and pilgrims, lacks city pleasures, and has given up hope of marriage due to her father dismissing suitors.
Princess Mary's life is one of increasing isolation and constraint, dictated by her father's failing health and his tyrannical control. He effectively traps her, preventing her from participating in society or pursuing her own happiness, like marriage. Her solitude, which was once a choice she balanced with piety, becomes a lonely prison.
Her isolation is deepened by the loss of friends. Mademoiselle Bourienne becomes unpleasant, and Julie Karagina is alienated by her focus on society life after inheriting her fortune, leaving Princess Mary with no one to talk to, no one to whom to confide her sorrow.
As her father's peculiarities intensify and she becomes more isolated, the few potential connections she had outside the immediate family dissolve. Mademoiselle Bourienne, her companion, becomes a source of tension, and the shift in Julie Karagina's life after becoming an heiress creates a distance, highlighting the different paths their lives have taken, one towards worldly success, the other towards increasing reclusiveness.
Her greatest sorrow is her father's increasing cruelty, which the source describes as torment because he loves her, tormenting himself and her. He makes her feel always to blame for everything.
That's a twisted dynamic.
A new source of torment is his ever-increasing intimacy with Mademoiselle Bourienne, which seems deliberately intended to offend Princess Mary.
This is the dark side of the old prince's loving despotism. His cruelty stems from his own internal turmoil, perhaps frustration with his illness or inability to control the world as he once did, which he projects onto Princess Mary. He torments the person he loves most, making her responsible for his unhappiness. His behavior with Mademoiselle Bourienne is a perverse form of emotional abuse, using his companion to wound his daughter, fulfilling a cruel jest about marrying Bourienne if Prince Andrew married. It's a destructive and heartbreaking dynamic.
We see the impact of this tyranny on Princess Mary herself when she is teaching little Nicholas. She detects her father's irritability in herself, struggling not to get angry, trembling, flushing, raising her voice, punishing him, and then crying afterward.
Oh, that's a powerful and painful scene. It shows the transmission of trauma and negative behavioral patterns across generations. Despite her own suffering and her father's hands and her gentle nature, she finds herself replicating his tyrannical behavior towards her nephew, revealing how deeply ingrained these patterns can become and how difficult it is to break free from them, even with conscious effort.
The incident with the French doctor Métivier vividly portrays the old prince's tyrannical nature. He erupts, shouting, "Spies, traitors, traitors everywhere," blaming Princess Mary for admitting a spy against his rules, telling her he could not die quietly because of her actions.
This scene is a terrifying display of his paranoia, rage, and need for absolute control, even in his illness. He projects his fears onto those around him, using the doctor's visit as a pretext for a tyrannical outburst. His blaming Princess Mary for disturbing his peace, even threatening his ability to die peacefully, is the ultimate emotional burden he places upon her.
Princess Mary's reaction, when the Rostovs are announced, the old prince shouting his refusal to see them, her decision to receive them despite fearing his freak, shows her conflict between duty to her father and perhaps a desire for connection, given Natasha is her brother's fiancée.
It highlights the constant tension in her life between her father's unpredictable tyranny and her own yearning for normal human connection and hope related to her brother's future happiness. Her decision to receive them, despite her fear, is a small act of independence or perhaps desperation for a link to the world outside her father's control.
Her first impression of Natasha is immediately negative. She finds her too fashionably dressed, frivolously gay and vain. The source provides key insight here, stating this prejudice was caused by involuntary envy of her beauty, youth, and happiness, as well as by jealousy of her brother's love for her.
This moment is such a rare glimpse into Princess Mary's hidden struggles and insecurities. Her initial judgment of Natasha isn't really based on Natasha's character, but on Princess Mary's own pain and longing. Her envy of Natasha's seemingly effortless beauty, youth, and happiness, qualities denied to Princess Mary by her circumstances and perhaps her own nature, and her jealousy of her brother's clear affection for Natasha reveal the depth of her isolation and the weight of her unfulfilled desires.
This dynamic sets the stage for Natasha's temptation, specifically by Anatol Kuragin. The opera scene is where it begins. Natasha is excited, finds Helene captivating, and then Anatol appears.
The opera provides a backdrop of heightened emotion and spectacle, doesn't it? A world of artificial beauty and performance, not unlike the salon, but amplified by the drama on stage. Natasha is already receptive to this atmosphere. The mention of Helene and then the arrival of Anatol immediately introduces a new, compelling presence into her world.
Anatol is described in detail, an exceptionally handsome adjutant, self-assured yet courteous bearing, restrained swagger, deliberately walking through the hall, sword and spurs jingling, radiating good-humored complacency and gaiety.
Anatol is the embodiment of charming, superficial recklessness. He possesses the outward polish that Pierre lacks, and a dangerous, carefree confidence. His physical presence and easy charm are his tools, used without moral restraint. He is precisely the kind of figure who would appeal to Natasha's impulsive emotional nature during a period of strain and waiting.
The encounter in the box is the turning point. Natasha's reaction to Anatol is immediate and overwhelming. She feels a horror that no barrier lay between him and her.
That horror, it's an instinctive, visceral recognition of the danger, isn't it? Of the overwhelming power of attraction that bypasses her reason and her commitment to Prince Andrew. It's a primal feeling that tells her on a deep level that her defenses have crumbled, that she is vulnerable to him in a way that is terrifying. It signifies the immediate, powerful impact he has on her emotional state.
After this encounter, Natasha is completely disoriented. She returns to her father's box, quite submissive to the world she found herself in. Her previous life and feelings for Prince Andrew seem like a remote past.
Everything changes in an instant for her.
She can't confide in Sonia due to her severe and simple views and struggles internally. Am I spoiled for Andrew's love or not? She tries to rationalize, telling herself nothing has happened. Andrew can love me still. But an instinct tells her the former purity of her love for Prince Andrew had perished. She fixates on Anatol's face and gestures.
This shows the immediate, devastating impact of her infatuation. Her emotional world is completely disrupted, her past feelings seeming distant and unreal in the face of this new, intense sensation. Her inability to confide in Sonia, who represents a stricter moral code, highlights the shame and confusion she feels. Despite her attempts at rationalization, her deepest instinct tells her that something fundamental has been broken, that the purity of her love for Prince Andrew, which she valued, is gone. She is completely consumed by this new feeling for Anatol.
Sonia tries to intervene, directly and desperately. Either break off with him, or break off with Bolkonsky. Natasha's response is defiant and desperate, but I can't live without him. I don't love anyone but him. How dare you say he is dishonorable? She cries angrily for Sonia to leave.
Sonia acts as the voice of reason and loyalty, trying to force Natasha to confront the consequences of her actions and choices. Natasha's reaction is just pure, raw, desperate emotion. She prioritizes her intense, immediate feeling for Anatol. Above all else, her commitment to Prince Andrew, her bond with Sonia, even common sense. Her words reveal the complete abandonment of reason and her total immersion in this overwhelming infatuation, tragically defending Anatol despite his known character flaws.
The sources conclude this section with Natasha's sleepless state, her desperate waiting for news from Anatol, and Count Rostov learning from Maria Dmitrievna that Natasha has been unwell. Natasha then tells him she has rejected Bolkonsky.
The break is made.
The Count is nervous and upset, lamenting his troubles with daughters, regretting coming to Moscow, though he admits the engagement was never much to my liking due to the father's disapproval, but questions Natasha's step without parental consent.
This sequence confirms the disastrous path Natasha has taken. Her sleeplessness and desperate waiting show the depth of her obsession with Anatol. Her telling her father she has broken the engagement formalizes the break with Prince Andrew. The Count's distress highlights the familial and social upheaval this impulsive decision causes. While he had reservations about the Bolkonsky family, Natasha's actions, taken without parental input, are a violation of social norms and reflect the depth of her emotional chaos and poor judgment.
While the sources don't explicitly detail the attempted elopement, the pieces they provide Natasha's intense obsession with Anatol, her feeling no barriers, Sonia's desperate intervention, and the Count's reaction to the broken engagement strongly point to the context of Natasha planning to run away with Anatol. Her overwhelming feelings led directly to this potentially ruinous decision.
Yes, the narrative trajectory laid out in these excerpts makes it absolutely clear that Natasha's unchecked passion and vulnerability, combined with Anatol's predatory charm, culminated in the desperate, misguided plan to elope. It's a powerful illustration of how easily impulsive emotion and lack of worldly wisdom can be exploited, leading to devastating consequences for the individual and their family within the rigid social structure of the time.
Wow. We've certainly covered a vast landscape of human experience in just these initial glimpses, from the calculated precision of Petersburg salons and military bureaucracy to the raw emotional chaos of battlefields and family homes.
Absolutely. These excerpts offer a truly profound look at human nature under pressure. The subtle manipulations, the naked ambition, the moments of quiet stoicism, the chaotic energy of youth, the devastating impact of personal failings like recklessness and poor judgment, and the complex, often painful struggle to find meaning and genuine connection in a world full of artifice and conflict.
And seeing how personal journeys, Pierre's search for spiritual truth, Prince Andrew's disillusionment and unexpected moments of awakening, Natasha's susceptibility to overwhelming emotion are so deeply interwoven with the major historical events and societal structures of their time.
Exactly. The individual is never truly separate from the world they inhabit. Their choices are shaped by societal pressures, historical context, and their own internal struggles. And in turn, their actions contribute to the larger narrative. We've seen characters navigating these forces, sometimes succeeding, sometimes failing, always revealing fundamental truths about the human condition.
It makes you reflect, doesn't it? Thinking about the immense social structures, the expectations, the internal flaws and desires we've seen play out. How do our own social worlds, with their own unique pressures and complexities, shape the choices we make today?
That's a question worth pondering long after our conversation ends. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you found it illuminating. Until next time.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Reader's Pair, where two readers bring you one book and endless insights. See you in the next chapter.